Welcome back to the Real Estate Girls podcast, where we talk about the highs, lows, and real information about real estate. I'm Heather,
I'm Casey.
and we are so happy to have you with us today. So, Casey, you want to dive into some market stats for March?
Sure. So this came out in March of 2025. This is from CPAR, the association that we are a part of is the Central Panhandle Association of Realtors. What's going on in the real estate market in the Panhandle of Florida? Let's start off with a big number. The median sale price rose to 337,600. That's up 2.9% from this time last year. That's a great sign of steady appreciation in the market. Despite shifts, property values are holding strong. And this is kind of a normal as far as a 3 to 5% appreciation is what you can expect for US homes. It's not going to be a 20% increase like we saw after Hurricane Michael in
Yeah,
2021 because you don't have people paying crazy amounts over appraisal prices that drove the
right.
sale prices up. So I feel like we're kind of going back to that normal,
Steady.
steady
Yeah, steady market
appreciation.
increase. Yeah. So active inventory is up 14.7%, and days on market have increased 29% to average days on market being 98 days. I think that this speaks to making sure you have a realtor that you're using who's knowledgeable, who is able to communicate this information to you as far as pricing, making sure that you're priced right in the market, and also allowing you to have expectations that your home is not probably not going to sell within 2-3 weeks of being on the market. A more realistic days on market is about 90 to 98 days on market. And so there's a lot more inventory for buyers to choose from right now. So having a realtor who can really push your property up, talking to Carl today, our guest who's coming on to talk about staging,
Yeah.
him coming in and kind of helping understanding how important it is to have a property staged and push it, to the top of that inventory of what buyers are seeing on the market to help sell your property quicker, and making sure that you're lined up with a realtor who really has that vision in mind for you is important.
Absolutely. Inventory's up. We're still in a buyer's market. We have about 7.5 months of inventory, which puts it in a buyer's market. So you really need to know how to market that property.
Right.
Personally, I mean, we can talk about this, but I just feel like I am working around the clock and my marketing has changed since 21 and 22,
Yeah.
where I'm just putting more effort, more marketing strategies, whether that be social media, constant contact emails, professional staging. I'm spending more on my listings. Video is you see a lot of realtors doing video now, and there's just more that goes into it because inventory is so high and buyers are picky.
Yeah.
Why are buyers picky? Interest rates.
Interest rates are higher. They want to make sure that they're buying the right house. And there's so many properties to choose from. Kind of going back to working harder, I think that we're also having to be very honest with sellers right now in this market. And it's sometimes not something that you want to hear, that, your home may be now based on comps worth this amount, whereas, a year or 2 years ago, it may have, value range may have been 20,000 higher. Unfortunately, it needs to be priced right because it needs to stand out from all of this inventory that's already on the market that buyers are viewing. And having an agent who is really working for you and is honest with you, just blatantly honest and telling you what the property needs, if it needs to be cleaned up, and how it needs to be priced is important.
Absolutely. Honesty is key. When I first got into real estate 6 years ago, I actually came in a pretty good market. I came in 19 and then it exploded in 21. So lucky me. But now when I approach listing presentations differently, if I have my purse and I cannot put my purse on your countertops because there is crap everywhere, and
Mm-hmm.
I use that term crap, but just items, clutter, should I say. And listen, my house is not perfect. I'm not selling my house, but if I did, all of my little toddler's toys would be put away and the clutter would be put away. But that's a real serious conversation I'm having is every showing matters. It needs to be show ready.
Hmm.
You need to put everything away. You need to declutter. You need to depersonalize. And if it's not clean and if there's stuff everywhere, it's hard for a buyer to visualize themselves in that property. And when a
Absolutely.
buyer's agent is showing that buyer 10 to 15 homes that day, your property needs to be set apart from the others. And if they're going to say, oh my gosh, there was so much stuff in the house that we couldn't really take in the house,
Hmm.
they're just going to move on to the next property. Buyers are picky right now. It's interest rates, it's inflation, it's cost of living, and they are looking at that monthly payment. And so that's the biggest piece of advice that I have for my sellers. Listen, if you have so many things, get a storage unit, put it in your garage, put things away, and it needs to be clean and show ready.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think about, and I've mentioned this to all of my sellers in the past, is hit the five senses, visually, it needs to feel good when you walk in. It needs to be clean,
Mm.
it needs to smell good. All of the five senses, it just needs to be perfect and stand out. And like I don't know.
Smell is huge.
Yeah.
If you have a pet, we have cats. I'm actually allergic to cats, and we have four. Ask me about that later. But if you can smell like pet dander,
Yeah.
that is a no-no. Like we got to get that out.
Yeah.
And we need to hide the dog bowls. We need to hide, the little doggy pillows or whatever your dog sleeps on.
Yeah.
We need to hide any proof that there's a dog in there because most people, that walk in, they might have dogs, but they don't necessarily want to smell it
It may
in
be
the
a turn off
house.
to some people.
Yeah.
I've whenever having my photographer come into a property, and I've coached the sellers sometimes, please make sure that this is visually ready, that this is ready for
Hmm.
photos, meaning hide all of your personal photos, your personal effects, toothbrushes, shampoos.
Absolutely.
I have walked into properties before where I've had to go through, and me and the photographer were just
Putting things
putting
away.
stuff
Yeah.
away,
Hmm.
hiding stuff to get it visually ready for those photos, because that is your first impression for buyers. Whenever they're looking at the photos, that's what's going to lead them to go to the property. And then when they get there, it needs to smell good, it needs to feel good, it needs to be memorable.
And you can't, once the photos are taken, like you can't look back and be like, oh no, I should have put the toothbrush
Yeah,
away.
it's there.
It's there. So, and we do this a lot.
Yeah.
So we know, but someone that hasn't sold their home in the last 10 years might not know that, your aftershave on the counter probably needs to be put away.
Right.
And I think that's the hardest thing is communicating to them. I know you live here. I know. But you need to make it look like you don't live here,
Yeah.
especially if you're competing with new construction.
Yes.
Because with new construction, a buyer can just walk in. Nobody's lived there before. I mean, I love new construction.
I do too.
No one's used that toilet, hopefully.
No one's cut their toenails in the house.
Right. So you really need to, make it look like you don't live there. And I know it's hard, but I wish some sellers would understand that
Mhm.
unless, you're 3, 4 months into a listing and then they get it. But, this is our advice for now. We have a lot of volatility going on in the stock market
Yes.
that I wanted to touch on. So April 2nd was dubbed, I guess, Liberation Day by our President Trump. This was a day that saw comprehensive tariff policy. It aimed at reducing the U.S. dependence on foreign goods. There was a 10% baseline tariff on all imported goods and higher reciprocal tariffs on countries that impose tariffs on U.S. exports. Now, Trump did this. He thinks, long term it'll help us. But 2 days later, so this happened on the 2nd, on the 3rd and 4th, the stock market kind of plummeted. We saw $6.6 trillion that was lost in the stock market. A lot of people were freaking out. What does this mean for the economy? What does this mean for real estate or interest rates? It could go one or two ways. With real estate, you can see a lot of these people that are investing in the stock market, they might pull out their money and invest in real estate because it could be a more secure investment. I don't think you're losing $6.6 trillion
No, it's
anytime soon in real
it's
estate.
more solid, and real estate has a what am I trying to think of here? It has a solid growth.
Right. The appreciation.
Appreciation, a solid
I mean,
appreciation.
obviously
So,
we had the crash in '08,
yeah,
but the 6.6 trillion is the greatest in US history, the loss. I mean, you think the stock market crashed in 29, this is greater than that.
yeah,
So, and then, you have a lot of people moving to these more secure bonds and things like that. I know, a lot of buyers, maybe they don't understand the stock market or what's going on, but they understand that the economy isn't great and there is some volatility going on, and that scares them.
yeah,
And so that could, buyers could be like, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen with the interest rates. The Fed chair came out recently, Powell, and said, I mean, I don't even think they've made a decision on what's going to happen with interest rates because they said it's the market's so volatile, and these tariffs that were enacted, they don't know what's going to happen if countries are going to come to the table and make deals. So to me, that's saying, oh, he doesn't know what they're going to do when they meet on the interest rate. So buyers might look at this and say, hey, now's not the right time to buy,
yeah.
even though we aren't a buyer's market and we can't stress enough at it, you have a lot more inventory out there and you can get these concessions. Um, but yeah, that's what's going on. Hopefully, there was a lot of the tariffs were paused to pretty much every country but China. I think we're in definitely a trade war with China right now. I'm going back and forth, and I think everyone would agree with me that we would want this to be resolved sooner than later.
Yeah,
And maybe,
absolutely.
in the long run, we can, it'll be beneficial to us in the long run.
Right. I think that there's benefits to it, but there's also some, um, things that cannot benefit us. One of the things that would not be beneficial is the cost of material for building houses increases
Yes.
because you're having to pay American workers more for those products to be so, like steel, to be
Hmm.
made in the US, or lumber. And
Absolutely.
that creates the cost of building a home to go up. And then for the builder, their bottom line shrinks,
Hmm.
and that increases the cost of the home to the consumer or the buyer. And so that creates higher sales prices on homes. And that would not be a good thing.
Even appliances, like if appliances go up, I mean,
Yeah,
as an investor or a builder, they're looking at return on investment.
yeah,
So you shrink that return on investment, they're going to have to charge more
right.
or not even invest.
Right, or not even invest, and that's a
Hmm.
big thing.
So
And I think that the goal is, the Fed, they want a balanced market, and so that's what I think.
nobody wants the volatility that we're
Right.
seeing right now. And so it's, I wish I had a crystal ball and say, hey, interest rates are going to drop. I know Powell came out and basically said they couldn't make an educated decision on it. And then the stock markets dropped after
Yeah.
that press conference. So obviously, we as realtors would love the interest rates to go
Right.
down. So
Yeah, and our goal as realtors is to help our consumers and our customers and clients make the best decisions to reach their goals, and so that's what we're here trying to do is educate and help you, guide you through the process of either selling your home or buying a home based on the market and how it's going.
absolutely. And I wanted to mention, kind of circling back to our previous conversation, I was reading an article at realtor.com. It said 81% of sellers expect to get their list price or above in 2025. Now, that's not necessarily the case in our market.
No, I
Are
don't
you
think
seeing
that's
that?
realistic at
I mean,
all.
if you're getting full price, then you can almost guarantee that that seller's giving some concessions. Is giving $8,000, $10,000, depending on the price of the house. They're
Yeah. Or it was full price put on the market, but it was priced very low. And then you have multiple buyers
right.
coming and making multiple offers on it. But I think that the goal for us as realtors is just to be honest and realistic about pricing right now and making sure that it comes on the market at the best price that will attract buyers. Because if it's priced too high, then you're not going to have anyone looking at your home where maybe comps from 6 months ago may have justified that price. Right now, we need to look forward at what the market's doing
Hmm.
and making sure, because inventory is so high, that that property stands out and the pricing is accurate.
Absolutely. Like when I do my comparative market analysis, I have a low, middle, high range.
Yeah.
Um, Post COVID, I was always listing high range and I was getting multiple offers
Yeah.
sometimes over. It's different now. I
It's,
always recommend middle to low range.
yeah.
I did have a house where I represent, well, we're transaction brokers, but I was acting as a buyer's agent on, it had multiple offers, but in my opinion, I felt like it was underpriced by $100,000. So in that case, of course, you're going to have multiple offers, and
Absolutely.
it went over, and I was lucky to secure that home for my buyer. But it reminded me a little bit of the COVID days.
Yeah. Well, and I of course I'm not in this market, so this is hearsay, but I had another agent in the Alabama market where sometimes that's actually how they price homes. They underprice it in hopes to get multiple
Hmm.
offers. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but that's an interesting tactic to take and something that I think we can kind of learn from and a seller can use to their benefit whenever pricing their home and putting it on the market.
Absolutely. Do you remember? I think it was 21 or 22. We were in Southport at a house, and it was Dice's listing, which was a coworker of ours. I don't know if you remember. It had solar panels, our favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Um, but there was at least 14 to 20 showings, and I remember either I was showing it first or you were, and then
Oh,
we
I was
ran into
walking
each
out.
other.
Yeah.
So Heather had a buyer for it. I had a buyer for this house. And I see Heather coming. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so cutthroat. Like,
Yeah.
it was, if you weren't there within a couple of hours of that house being listed, like, you didn't stand a
Yeah.
chance. So I'm
Multiple
kind of
offers.
glad that we're not in those because it was so stressful. This is another level of stress, but this is part of real estate. And
Yeah.
we're here for it
Yeah.
every
It's
step of the way.
part of being a professional and helping guiding all of our buyers and sellers, to help them.
But
But
I saw you and I was like, oh no.
I thought the same thing. Well, we have the same training and the
Yeah.
same amazing brokers. And I was
Right.
like, dang it, we really got
I
to
will
get.
say we were the two top offers
We
that won
were.
that.
Yeah.
So we must have been doing something
That's
right.
right. Yeah.
Okay. So each episode we're excited to have our guest on with us today. Carl Dismukes is the owner of Coastal Stage Designs, LLC, the Florida's Panhandle's premier home staging company based in beautiful Panama City Beach. He specializes in preparing homes for sale with expert staging and furnishing short-term rentals to maximize ROI, which is return on investment. From the Emerald Coast to the Forgotten Coast, Carl brings high quality design and service across a wide area. Heather and I have personally worked with Carl, and we're so excited to have him on the show with us today. Thanks for being here,
Well,
Carl.
thanks for
Thank you for
having me.
being here.
Yeah, what led you to home staging, and when did you realize this was the career path for you?
How long do we have? I've always been a creative professional. I've been graphic designer, art director, and brand manager eventually at a corporate position. And you know how corporations go. I was working full-time remote here, and they wanted everybody to relocate to corporate headquarters in New Jersey. In Panama City, New Jersey, I'll take Panama City, and stayed. And so I then had to kind of figure out what am I going to do after this career in corporate. And there's no corporate jobs here to speak of that I could find. And so I got my real estate license. And I've always had a kind of a passion for designing interior spaces, even as a kid. But so on day one, when I met with my realtor, I said, what do you know about home staging with my broker? And what do you know about home staging? He said, well, you can get an accreditation for it. Yeah. So I did immediately and within a couple of months. And then I started staging for myself and for other people in my office. And then after a few months, I went ahead and I just expanded that and went ahead and opened the business, Coastal Stage Designs. And then that was 1 week before Hurricane Michael hit. So I went back into selling for a little while because, then nobody cared what their house looked like. They just wanted a roof. It was
Right.
pretty
Or
sad.
somewhere to live.
So I went back into that for a while, but then investors were coming in and buying up properties. And there was one in particular from California. He didn't put anything on the market without staging it. So we got in contact, and then I started helping with some of the design selections and then staging them when they went on the market. So that kind of gave me a boost into the market, into the staging. And then, 7 years later, here we
Wow.
are.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, I feel like if you couldn't sell a house in that market, then you
You're
probably
doing
don't need.
something
Right.
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
demand was so
it
high.
was
I mean,
crazy.
I feel
Yeah.
like if you listed it a week later, you had multiple offers, or even 24 hours later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that I can see where you would want to go back and try to sell real estate, but just being a real estate agent that knows how to stage a home, I imagine you had some tough conversations with sellers about their
Right.
furnishing, the
Well,
furnishings.
that's true. And for the most part, I would, for my listings, I would just give them staging. We would go in and use
That's
their furnishings because they
right.
weren't vacant.
Yeah.
So I worked with them. So, yeah, but having that background in real estate is, I think it's important for a stager to understand the market, to
Absolutely.
understand how it works and what's important to buyers, and having that firsthand interaction with people going into homes was just a school in learning there on how to interact with them, what they want in a house. So I was able to acquire that.
And even on the exterior, I know recently, I gave you a project that was not easy. And you said, Casey, I think a fence would really help because it's on a
Yep.
busy road. And I've thought of it, but just having your input, of that's coming from a realtor
Yeah.
kind of, hey, this is what buyers want.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really
To back you
appreciate
up.
you staging homes, for us, as well as giving us feedback from a realtor mindset.
Good. Good.
Yeah. Okay. What is something people, particularly realtors and sellers, misunderstand about working with a stager and or interior designer?
Well, I think that probably the thing that most people don't kind of understand is the difference between interior design and staging. Interior design is for a family, for their likes, dislikes, what their lifestyle is. Whereas staging is kind of the opposite. It's appealing to the widest market possible so that anybody can see themselves living in the home. So they're different in that way that people, they don't, they think that it's an interior design project. Well, yeah, we're closely related, but staging is a very different thing.
It's more like I would say an art to make sure that the picture is beautiful for the home buyer that walks into the room.
Yeah.
And it appeals to them, and then they, move on to making an offer and purchasing the property. So that's
Yeah, well, one thing that also that I is a good advice for any buyers, I think, is your home is when your home goes on the market, it's no longer your home. It's now a product for sale. And you
yes.
got to think of it that way as how is the best way to present this product to my market.
I love that.
Absolutely. And do you focus only on staging homes for sale, or do you also help with decorating homes for people who aren't selling? I know you mentioned that investor, that bought up properties, maybe to short-term rent it.
Well, first of all, I'm not an interior designer. I don't claim to be, and there are some amazing interior designers in our area, and I love being associated with them. But I'm home staging professional, but we also do short-term rental furnishing because it's a lot like staging, because it's not to appeal to one particular individual. It's to appeal to, in the case of an Airbnb, to all those people who viewed the photos online and book and then have a 4-star experience at the place. So, yes, we do that, and we work with investors who need the short-term rental furnishing.
And you're appealing to as many people as possible. You're not going
Right.
to have Colorado, elk head, deer head, moose, whatever,
In a
No.
in a
condo.
condo.
But at the beach, and for me, short-term rental furnishing versus staging are two very different things, because the beach, yes, for short-term rental, we want to appeal to the people's biggest dreams. A mural on the wall. We've done murals on walls to, for that Instagram moment. We've done lots of fun things like that I wouldn't suggest you do in your home, but they're great for short-term rental.
Yeah.
Where do you get all your furniture?
Everywhere.
I need to know, because we were just talking about this. We had the centennial celebration for CPAR, our association, and you staged that event. And it's like, where did you get 1920s
Well,
furniture?
I had help with that.
Okay.
There's a place, wonderful place called the Celebration Place, and
Okay.
they were the ones who provided that furniture. I went to them and selected from what they had, and there just happened to be just the perfect stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. The way you put everything together for that celebration was amazing. It was so beautiful. Every room you walked into was gorgeous. You did an
I
amazing
felt like we
job.
were truly back in the 1920s.
Yeah, it was
It
perfect.
was fun.
Yeah, it was
It
awesome.
was a fun event.
And
It
you
really
have a
was.
good eye for things. I will say, this is kind of a funny story. I don't think Heather knows about this, but we were clearing out our spare bedroom because we're making room for Sawyer's playroom.
Yeah.
And so I took a picture of the furniture I had in there. I said, Carl, do you want any of this stuff? And he quickly responded, no, which I kind of knew it was like not great, you know? But I just laughed because I was like, of course he wouldn't like this. Like
Yeah.
his taste is way better than
So
sorry.
mine
you
is.
see beauty
No,
in
there's-
every piece and then put it all together in the most perfect way in each room.
I don't think he could have helped with this furniture that I had, but he goes, I'm sorry, because it was so bad. The furniture I had, he didn't even want it. But I appreciated it. It was like a hard no, and I actually ended up, my dad took it because nobody else would. But anyways, you just know how to put everything together, and I think making the right choices is so key to your business.
Absolutely. And it's such a unique trade, I guess, or business, and definitely needed for realtors, especially in our community, because I don't know of any other person or trade in this area other than you. So if a seller is in need of we walk into the home and we think, oh my goodness, this is going to have a hard time selling unless a professional comes in and professionally stages it. You're the only person I know to go to.
There are others. I have some competition. I'm
you're
not
the
going to
most
promote
well-known.
them,
Right.
but there are other stagers in the area.
I gotcha.
There are.
You're just the best of the best.
Yeah,
let's
you're
be
the best of the
honest.
best, and you have that real estate eye, and I think that's important for all of us realtors who need to hire someone who's professional.
Absolutely.
When you arrive at a new project and you walk into the home, what's the first thing that you notice? Also, what's your process for staging a home, and how do you decide which areas to focus on?
Okay. Again, how much time do we have? The process, walking into a room. Okay, that's the kind of a stager's basic rule is walk in the room. What is the focal point in the room? Is there a fireplace? Is it a view? Is it a bedroom? Is the bed is the focal point? And then you want to see that, so that helps me to see how this room would be arranged. What's needed? What will I need for that? And then I also look for deficiencies. Is there a space that's like, what's this space used for? And so we need to think about that space, how to fix that. Are there some updates? Do we need to say, you know what, before you stage, you really have got to paint, and make some recommendations. So, and then I'll provide a proposal to the client at that point. And once they've accepted it, we put it on the calendar, and we, it's usually a one-day process. Sometimes I like to have a second day, but we usually get it done in one day. And then it's there for a minimum of 60 days.
And you even provide, like this last one that you did for me, a floor plan of the first floor,
Yeah.
which I really appreciated. And
Well,
you said
good,
that was
good.
necessary for that one.
Yeah. I've gotten to where I do them all. There are some really good tools for doing floor plans, and so it's pretty easy to do. But I've got to have that floor plan while I'm planning. I've got to know the sizes and the furniture and spacing. So
How long does that take? I guess it depends on the house or the condo.
yeah, I mean, if it's just one bedroom, and kitchen and living room, it won't take. It takes me about a day on the major planning, and then about a day on making the accessory selections. So that's, but it can take longer if it's a full house. That's going to, of course, take probably a couple of weeks with some ordering new furniture if necessary, that kind of thing.
A lot of it's a creative process, just trying to, the art behind it, make sure this fits. What if it doesn't fit in that space, you take it out and kind of replace it with something that looks a little better.
You know, I really try, but sometimes we get there and it's like, oh, this piece does not work here. So there's plenty of times when we make a trip back to the warehouse.
Gotcha.
And
Carl told me on this last one, it's kind of a puzzle to figure out, but we figured it out, and you hit it. It was
good.
110%. It looked amazing.
Yeah.
So appreciate you. We know realtors are some of your top clients. Can you share how your staging has helped their listings?
Yeah. Well, in general, statistics show that a staged home will sell faster and for more money than non-staged homes. So, I mean, that's just pretty simply put. But I've got a few stats because recently Florida Association of Realtors put out an article on staging, and one of the things that they found was that 81% of agents say it helps buyers visualize a home. That's most of you guys, who understand that. The average price property, now this is according to the International Association of Home Staging Professionals, which I'm a member of and active in, but the average price property sell at 3.4 to 5 times faster according to IHOS. And survey results showed that 69% of staged properties sell for 4 to 18% more. And here's just an interesting thing that in our area, only 5 to 10% of properties are staged. That leaves a lot of unstaged homes out there, and it's guys like you who understand the benefits behind the investment. And I want to make sure that everybody, that all realtors understand, how that we can help them to make more money for their clients and higher commission for themselves.
Yeah. You did a project for us a couple years ago. Casey and my husband are partners in a construction company, and we did a flip, and we had it on the market for quite some time. I think we said around 200 days. And it was a beautiful home. The view on the lake was amazing, but it didn't have that warm, cozy feeling. And I had seen you post on social media and the results of some staging projects you had done. So Casey and I got together and we're like, let's hire Carl, get him in here. And you knocked it out of the park, because I think we got it under contract within and the market was shifting at the time. So it was kind of an uncertain time, but the warmth and the color that you added to that project was amazing. And I think we sold it in 2 or 3 months.
It was incredible. I think, in this case, the home was quite large, but in a lot of cases, when you put furniture in, it makes the room look bigger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when you take that furniture away, that people are like, "Oh, it's so small." Isn't
Right.
it's kind of
Yeah, that's true.
This was an incredible project. I was a little skeptical at first, to be honest, because it is an investment.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't understand what you could bring to the table till that project. And for realtors that maybe can't afford that, or maybe they haven't worked out with the sellers, whether the realtor is going to front the cost or the seller is, you have an option where you can pay at closing now. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
I'm partnering with a company called Titus, and they are providing this across the staging industry, and it's pay at close. And for a very simple process, the buyer or the seller can go on, enter an application, if you will, but it's like a few questions. They do a soft credit check, not a hard credit check. And if based on your credit score if there is any kind of interest on it. And for good people with good credit score, it's zero interest.
Wow.
So you would pay the same thing that you would pay me up front for it. No additional cost if your credit score is good. So it's a great option. Also, realtors can do it as well. If it's a project that you believe in, realtors can also do that, and they get it out of their commission at
Right.
close.
And I think it is a risk that you're taking, but it's a calculated risk. Like the goal of like our goal, especially if we're a listing agent, is to sell the home.
Mhm.
If we feel like this is going to give it the best shot, especially in this buyer's market that we are in, it's better to have that sale and maybe get a little less commission because you're paying a professional to stage the home than no sell at all.
Right.
And I think it's a benefit that we can present to sellers. Hey, this is what we do. This is what we bring to the table. You said 5 or 10% of realtors are doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's setting us apart as well.
Absolutely. And in this buyer's market, when there's so much to choose from as far as inventory goes, it's so important to bring that property top of mind to buyers and make it appealing. Because again, you're selling a product. It's no longer the seller's, like you said, home. It's a product on the market that needs to stand out.
Yep. And that first impression with photos online, that's the first thing they see. If that house stays on the market for 6 months and they've been empty rooms showing there, they won't necessarily go back and look at it again with the furniture there when it's more appealing and gets that emotional response for them that I want to go see that house.
Absolutely.
And so it's important to do it up front. But in the instance of the house that we did, the first one we did together, make a course correction, get in and get it done, you know.
Photos are so important. Like we don't want people taking cell phone photos, especially if the house is being staged.
Yeah.
Do you offer where you pay a photographer or?
I partner with others. I don't want to call anyone out in particular because there's some amazing photographers.
Exactly.
But I'm happy to help if I need to with photos. But but for the most part, it is the either the realtors or the sellers that is their problem.
If you're gonna have the expense on getting a home professionally staged, get professional photos.
Yes, please.
So
please, and I'll help if I need to.
How do you balance a client's vision, and have you ever had to turn down a job where the visions didn't align?
Well, like the definition of staging and what its purpose is to appeal to the widest market. So yes, I like having input from the seller, especially if it's like a new construction and they have put their lives into this property. They have an emotional attachment to this place. They've seen so I definitely, I want to hear what your thoughts are, and it may help to kind of to define what we do there.
But most of the time, people think they know what they're doing when it comes. For instance, like my spare bedroom, it was awful. That they think they know, but really you are the professional. And I just feel like sometimes just letting you lead and putting trust in you makes all the difference. But you have to kind of find a balance, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, just for practical purposes, all the selections have to be at my choice.
Good.
I mean, it depends on what I've got in inventory at the time because that changes daily. What is in the warehouse, what comes and goes.
And I think a seller, when they live in a home, they don't see what an outside professional creative sees when they walk in the home. They think, oh, that's fine, or this color on the walls is fine. Like you said, sometimes you suggest painting, and when you walk in as an outside perspective, you're like, oh no, these things need to be changed and updated, and that's important.
Yeah, and when I explain the purpose of staging, everybody gets it. They understand. I don't have a lot of clash, and I've had some issues before where we didn't. I've worked with interior designers sometimes who've called me in, and they may have had a very definite, idea. So sometimes it doesn't work that great, but I mean, that's 1 in 100,
It's all about artistry. I think every artist is a little different and has a different, I don't know. It's individual.
Yeah.
I think art is individual, and I kind of consider this like a beautiful form of art.
Yeah, I think it's kind of painting a picture. My college education was an art major, so I always enjoyed putting still lifes together to paint them. You know, a vase and flowers and everything. And I still do that now when I'm putting the accessories on tables. I'm still making still lifes, I think.
That's so much fun.
It is, and it's beautiful. I love what you do. So
Thank you.
How do you approach staging for different styles of homes, modern, traditional, and how do you decide on the right color palette and decor to appeal to potential buyers?
Well, it's really, for me, it's more about the demographic of the buyer than it is the style of the home. If it's, and we've got to, again, make it appeal to as many people as we can. So if it's an older house, then we probably need to contemporize it a little bit. If it's too contemporary, we might want to make it a little softer. So just so that people can visualize living in the home. So the style is going to probably be more based on what I feel like people are going to see there. But of course, things do help kind of dictate things like color, wall colors. If they just weren't able to repaint and maybe the wall color is a little darker, we really want to brighten it up with brighter furniture, with brighter rugs and things like that. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. And then again, it's also based on what the style that I kind of visualize here as a coastal contemporary style. And so I buy things when I'm purchasing things, I buy them based on that overall style, so that hopefully pretty much anything will work together when I'm going through the warehouse and not having different styles.
You have great style, and I know several buyers, and we've talked about this, where they want to purchase the furniture.
Yeah.
Because they're like, okay, we're going to buy the house, but we know when we move in, it's not going to look like this. So can we purchase this furniture? And so you've helped me out actually recently on one, on a porch. And thank you for that, because to be open to that. I know that's obviously because then you have to go back and find other things and buy other things. So thank you for being accommodating as well.
And I think it helps to refresh my inventory when that happens. Something goes out, and probably it's going to be some of my favorite things, you know. But when somebody wants to buy it, it goes out. But I have the opportunity to then go and acquire new to, keep it fresh.
Where do you hold all this furniture? Do you have a storage unit?
I've got a warehouse,
Okay.
7,000 square foot warehouse.
Wow.
I got it to have some room to grow as we do grow. And right now we've got enough for about 25 houses, and I want to be able to kind of make it comfortable as we go up from that.
how many houses do you have staged right now, just off the top of your head?
Well, I said we have enough inventory for 25. We actually have 21 out as of
All
last
right,
week.
you got 4 more.
Yeah.
So how many a
And-
year on average are you staging? Just staging, not the curating, but
I
this.
think the staging right now, last year, we were just over 60 for the year.
Wow.
That's a
And
lot.
I mean, that kind of comes and goes because we're in a seasonal business.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, winters can get kind of slow
Right.
for us. And we're in a small market here. Now, there are probably stager friends of mine around the country who are laughing because they will do that many in 2 weeks.
Yeah, but they probably have a huge team as well.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. There are some big time staging companies out in the world, but we're a small little community here.
Yeah.
And while I'm thinking about it, I know that you staged one for me over in Jake's Landing. It was a rental.
Yeah.
Which we did that because I had an investor come in and he bought several, and then my husband and I personally bought one as a rental.
Okay.
And I knew I needed those pictures, and I needed to get that first one rented,
Right.
and to kind of promote the other ones.
Right.
And not necessarily your furniture because we rented them out so quickly, but when we bought ours, it was empty, and we were having a hard time getting a renter in there. And one day I met these two wonderful ladies, and I was like, okay, these are going to be our renters, please. Because the other ones just rented out so quickly because of
Uh-huh.
your staging. And they walked it, they're like, it's not going to work. Their rooms are way too small. And I go, oh, they're not that small. It just feels like that because there's not furniture in here, you know?
Yeah.
Luckily, Leanne with DR Horton was able to get me into their model
Okay.
that had staged
Yeah.
furniture.
Yeah.
I walked them upstairs into those bedrooms, and because there was furniture in there,
Uh-huh.
they were sold. They're like, okay, we're gonna
Yeah.
rent your
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just
Staging
reiterates
works.
how important staging is. And
It works.
I use you. All of these are rented, 4 rented, and then we get one. Nothing. We can't. I think it took a couple months to get a renter in there, and it's just because the rooms felt so small.
That's a
And
smart
so-
use of it to just get renters, not
Yeah.
just for sale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's all different, things. You just have to kind of adapt to the market.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a big client that's buying a bunch of rentals, this is a way to show your appreciation and give your best foot forward to try to get these units rented for them because they're trusting you to find them great rental properties.
Yeah.
What's your number one tip for someone decorating their home on a tight budget? Or what are small changes that make the biggest impact in a space?
Well, several years ago, I had a friend who was giving me advice on furniture, and he says, whenever you go out to buy furniture or accessories or anything for your home, do it with your eye, not with your pocketbook. You can find affordable furniture that works. You don't have to go high end on things, but you use a good eye and make good selections when you choose things for your home. I think probably the biggest challenges are going to be wall color. The biggest change I would suggest is changing wall colors because, if you've got outdated wall colors, and, of course, here we all like white now. There was an agreeable gray phase that's over now, I think, and we're moved on to
Are you
white.
glad that we're gone? Are we moving away from
I
agreeable
was
gray?
a little sad at first,
I
but
love
I've
agreeable
embraced
gray.
it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't like
No?
agreeable gray. No, I've
Yeah.
never
We
liked
painted that
gray.
whole flip agreeable gray. You
I
should.
know.
Maybe that's why it didn't
Two
sell
of
it.
them. We painted 2
Yeah.
flips agreeable gray.
Maybe
And
not.
it was the
So
standard.
what's your favorite wall color right now?
I like a white called Greek Villa.
Greek
Greek
Villa.
Villa. It's
Okay.
I love that.
got a little warmth to it, but it's definitely white.
Okay.
I don't like stark
Right.
white. That honestly, it feels cheap to
Yeah.
me to
Yeah.
be stark. I like to have a little warmth to it. It's richer, but still. So yeah, that's my pick on the whites right now. A couple more things. If the rooms are dark, don't be afraid to go invest in daylight bulbs for the rooms. It will make all the difference in the world. I staged a house the other day it was on the water in one of the canals in Lynn Haven, but it had all this glass, but it was dark in there. And we changed out all the lights to daylight bulbs in there, and it just
Makes
made
a
all the
difference.
difference in the world. So, and that's kind of a tip for living there as well as a staged home. But when it's a staged home, always open those blinds and
You want to
let light in.
the
when
buyer
people,
to see everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens if the home doesn't sell immediately? Do you offer staging for a longer period or make adjustments? I know you said initially it's 60 days.
Right.
So what happens after that?
After that, we just have a renewal fee
Right.
that to keep it for however long we usually do first of the month, and we kind of move them all up to the first of the month so that I'm not doing it every day of the week, every day of the month. But we just do a renewal fee, and then they keep it as long as need be.
Right.
Our market's a little weird right now,
It is.
so I understand that it
Takes a little longer to get
it's taking a
things.
little bit longer.
What is one trend you're excited to see making a comeback and one you wish would disappear?
Something I like as a trend is, I don't know if it's necessarily a comeback, but mixed metals with black and gold, with bringing in bronze,
I've seen the bronze.
pewter, whatever, and mixing it up a little bit. Sometimes I think that as much as I like black hardware, it can be a little bit much throughout the house, I think. And, of course, brass hardware, brass doorknobs, that looks like our grandparents' doorknobs. But, there are, just, I think a mixture of them works. And I like that. Something that I wish would, well, I don't say I wish it would go away yet, but I'm not that fond of wallpaper.
Oh, I love wallpaper. I am like a maximalist. If I could do wallpaper in like different colors
She's
in
stuck
every
in the
room,
80s.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I love character.
Okay, well, I'm gonna.
When I see
No.
wallpaper, I'm like, okay, how are we getting this taken off immediately? It's so bad. I mean, the newer wallpapers, like maybe in a half bath I could
Yeah.
do, but
Yeah.
no, you're talking like
Yeah.
full rooms.
I love wallpaper. Yeah, full room or accent walls with wallpapers
And
in
when it's-
different colors. I love
When
it.
it's done right, it's
looks
amazing.
good.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
But
Um,
most of the time, they're not done right.
This is why
Right.
Heather doesn't stage homes. This is why I call Carl.
well, and one thing though that is kind of popular right now that I'm on board with for Airbnb for short-term rental is accent walls.
Oh yeah.
Wallpapered accent walls, a jungle scene or something fun like that.
That'd
So
be cool.
definitely on board with that because then to me it's more art. One thing I'm an artist, so I appreciate art. So that's one of my things about wallpaper. It's like we got a competition of patterns and style and design going on, whereas plainer walls will accent the art is my opinion.
Yep, and again, you're appealing to the masses,
Right.
buyers. So, wow.
But I'm sure your wallpaper is beautiful.
I don't have any
No.
yet. My
Oh.
husband's against it. And our whole house is painted in gray.
Is it agreeable gray?
It's not agreeable gray, but little does he know, one room's about to turn pink.
Oh, nice. Are there any decorating mistakes you see people make over and over? I have pink room for Scarlett too.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that. She'll love it.
Yeah, she will.
She will love it.
Yep.
Well, a few things like bright colored walls.
I have purple recently.
Yeah.
Purple walls.
In Sawyer's room.
Oh no,
In a
just in
listing.
a client.
Oh, and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a customer.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's
Yeah,
purple.
I mean, it's especially a no-no for staging, but
It's
even
almost
for,
shocking. You like walk in a
Yeah.
room, you're like,
It's
whoa. This came out of nowhere because the whole house will be fine, and then you walk into a room and you're just shocked.
yeah, and then it will forever be known as that house with the
With
purple
the
room.
purple
Yeah.
room,
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of wall-to-wall carpet. No, don't do it. Plate glass mirrors in bathrooms. That big wall of
Oh,
mirrors.
yeah.
Use a beautiful frame, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's one that kills me: is backsplash in the kitchen that has the 4-inch backsplash that matches the countertop,
Oh, like
and
the
then
tile?
above.
Oh, it contrasts.
Yeah, do one or the other.
Yeah.
Do one or the other. And a couple of
No,
hanging,
we want to hear it all. We want to hear. People
hanging
need to hear
artwork too high.
Yes.
That if you walk in, it's up the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
It should be. It should average the average woman's height in the middle of her eyesight. So that's the kind of it's a rule of thumb that changes. But and like too high off of a sofa, having that picture up way above a sofa. It should be about 4 to 5 inches off the sofa,
Okay.
and a good size piece. And another little just nit, an area rug in a room. The sofa sitting off of the area rug instead of sitting on the area rug. That rug will tie everything together, but they have to be touching.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
Good to
it's a
know.
few
How
things.
do you feel about sofas against a wall?
I've had this discussion a lot lately because I don't like sofas backed up against the wall. I like some space behind them, especially since we are usually using a sofa watching TV. You don't want people walking in front of you,
Right.
especially if it's coming through the room. So putting it behind, I think, is better. And it also becomes a piece of furniture instead of a built-in against the wall. You know, it's its own thing. But there's this rule apparently that you should not see the back of a sofa when you walk into a room, and I think that's a good kind of, again, rule of thumb. But there's always exceptions. When you walk in, like if it's a beautiful piece, like I just used one that's a beautiful sofa. It's kind of curved. The back of it is just as pretty as the front, you know. Now, but if you're walking into a room and you're met by a wall that's the back of a sofa, and there's a view out there of the Gulf, you don't want to be visually blocked by that sofa, you know, because that will do a visual block for you. So there's kind of a couple of different schools of thoughts on where the sofa should be placed.
There's so much that goes into it that
I know.
that I haven't even considered.
Yeah, so much you think about and have that eye for.
So, what era of interior design do you personally connect with the most, and why?
Well, okay, so I think that probably the style that I like the most is, I mean, appreciate it for its beauty, is what is organic architecture. If you know Frank Lloyd Wright, it's a style in the 20s, 30s, you know, of 1900s, and it kind of brings in the outdoors it all fits into the landscape, and everything is all comes together. So I really appreciate that style, interior and exterior, because
Is
it's
that
very
bringing like
simple.
greens in, greenery,
Well,
or
it's a lot
When I
of
think
glass,
okay.
and the architecture kind of blends into the landscape. It's just a thing of beauty. But I'd have to say, aside from that, Art Deco, it's such a beautiful, simple, sophisticated, and elegant style. It's quiet, and you know, it's streamlined. But on the other side, I've got eclectic taste. I also like French country.
Oh
It's
yeah.
because it's so comfortable, so welcoming and inviting. And it's totally opposite from the other things, but I think it's a beautiful thing.
Do you travel to other countries and pick up little things here and there, or?
I wish.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just have an appreciation for it, and as an art major, you know, I studied a lot
course.
of that then, and have always had an interest in it. And like I said, I've always worked as a creative professional, so I've always had contact with, you know, the art world.
If you had no budget constraints, what's one space you'd love to redesign and how would you transform it? What would be your dream project?
Well, okay. I would have to say that I've had a couple that come close to that, because I've worked with investors several times, and there's one I did a couple of houses with them, and they were both waterfront houses, you know, two-story, beautiful homes, and I was able to help with redesigning spaces inside, like adding bathrooms where they needed to be added, and then working through, you know, fixtures, finishes, colors as they're finishing it up, and then staging the house when it was ready to go on the market. So those are pretty cool projects, and I enjoyed those a lot. Um, if dream project, no budget, and yeah, I'm sure I could find a mansion somewhere to spend a lot of money on, you know. But uh, all in all, every project is a challenge, you know, and I like the challenges.
I can imagine how cool it is to see a project come to life after it's done and everyone's reaction and appreciation for your
That
artistry.
HGTV moment.
Yeah, the reveal.
He'll send us pictures, you know, like here's your preview picture. I'm like, it looks completely different, like in the best way possible.
Yeah,
So
there's
and then when you walk in, it's even better. in
even
person.
better. I know. There's projects, again, the 2-story waterfront house that you did.
Yeah.
I could not believe how amazing each room looked. And again, it made the rooms look bigger. It just,
And that room had like the great room had 2-story ceilings in
Mm-hmm.
it,
Wow.
and it was the one that that I did with you guys. It was like
Oh,
wide
yeah, it
open,
was soaring
so you had to,
ceilings.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I'd give me a project with no budget and no in whatever time.
It's coming, I know.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time speaking with us
Sure.
today. Where can people reach you? Where can they connect with you if they're interested in your services?
Well, my website is Coastal Stage Designs with an S on the end at .com, and you can reach me, at carl.dismukes@gmail.com, and
Perfect.
come see me, come talk to me.
Perfect. We appreciate you,
Thank
Carl.
you,
Thank you so
Carl.
much.
So each episode, we answer one of those real estate questions people are thinking but don't always ask. How does the Florida's homestead exemption work, and why is it such a big deal for homeowners? What do you think, Heather? What's the Florida homestead exemption in Florida?
Okay. Why do I feel like
So-
I'm doing that right now? Get it together,
the
Heather.
homestead exemption, you're perfectly fine, because you know what? I have so many clients that aren't from Florida that come in,
Mm-hmm.
and I mentioned to them, and they were like, "What? You say what?"
Yeah.
So in Florida, it's a property tax benefit available to homeowners who make their Florida property their permanent residence. It helps reduce the taxable value of the home, which in turn lowers the property taxes owed. So it reduces the assessed value of the home up to $50,000.
Yeah, which is amazing. And you have the Save Our Home cap
Mm-hmm.
and a shield against rapid market inflation with the exemption in place. Assessed value increases are capped at 3% per year, or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower.
That's huge. So
Yeah.
basically, what she's saying is, if you buy a home and you file homestead, your house can't go up over 3%.
Yeah, the
per year.
assessed
The
value,
assessed value.
of the property, which is amazing.
You can apply March 1st of the tax year for which you are claiming the exemption. For Bay County residents, you can apply in person at 860 West 11th Street in Panama City. That's the Bay County Property Appraiser's Office. Bring your driver's license, social security card, some utility bills that show that you live there.
It's your primary residence.
If you don't do this, it could cost you hundreds of dollars. On higher priced homes, it could be substantially more. I wanted to give a quick example on a property. So an assessed property, the market value is $300,000. You have a homestead exemption of $50,000. So you take that $300,000 house minus 50, and we're not talking land values. It's just a very generic example. So now the assessed value is $250,000. Let's talk about mills. A millage rate, also called a mill rate, is the tax rate used to calculate local property taxes. It's expressed in mills. 1 mill equals $1 per 1,000 of assessed property value. We here in Bay County, we had a budget hearing, and it had these mills. It was 5.4 approximately for the general fund. The mosquito control was 0.2 mils, and the MSTU fire was 1.38 mils. When you add that together, that is 7.0162 mils. And I know this is a lot of math, but stay with me. So without the homestead exemption, the full market value is $300,000, which is taxable. So how do you calculate your taxes for this example? You take that $300,000, divide it by 1,000, you times it by your mills, which is the 7.0162, and your taxes on that home is going to be around $2,104.86. With the homestead exemption, the taxable value is reduced to $250,000. You do the same equation. You take that $250,000, divide it by 1,000, times it by your mills, and that comes out to about $1,754. So it's about a $350 worth of savings.
Yeah, which is huge,
Right.
I think, when you're looking long term, but also at how if you don't file homestead exemption, the assessed value is not capped at 3% per year. So your home value goes up, then what you're paying in taxes go up. And
Your monthly payment could go up.
right.
And just note that on this estimate is based on county level millage rates and does not account for additional taxes from other entities such as school districts or municipalities. But there's also other benefits. defiling homestead exemption. It can protect your primary residence from forced sale by creditors, right?
Yeah,
Right, Heather?
that's correct. So these would be unsecured creditors, and those would be, credit cards, personal loans, medical debt, business judgment, auto loan deficiencies, and civil judgments. They cannot put any type of lien on your property or, force a sale if you have homestead exemption filed on your property. Now, there's always, creditors that can force a sale. So don't get those confused with your actual mortgage lender that you have the loan on the property for. Your property taxes, HOA, condo associations, mechanical or contractors liens. So say you have a roof put on the property and you did not pay them, they can certainly put a mechanical lien on the property, or of course the IRS.
But if you're just having a good time at Dillard's and don't pay your bill,
Right. They cannot put a lien
okay,
on your
cool.
property and you're protected.
And speaking of property taxes, we know that Florida, we don't have any state income tax. That's why a lot of people are coming here. Governor DeSantis met with Florida realtors at the headquarters in Orlando a couple weeks ago, and he's proposing a piece of legislation to give it's $1,000 rebate is what I like to call it for the property taxes if you have a homestead in Florida. So if you're an investor, sorry, you're out of luck. But he's proposing this piece of legislation. It'll be interesting if it's going to pass, but I think it would help for sure because I feel like property values are on the uptick.
They
And
are,
$1,000 is a lot of money right now to people.
Truly, it is. And so the important thing to note here is on your primary residence, make sure that you file homestead exemption. You can do it from January 1st until March 1st of the year that you purchase the property. So say you purchase a property in 2024, but it's past that March 1st deadline, then you file for 2025 between January 1st and March 1st.
Perfect.
You have to hold equitable or legal title to the property, and it must be your permanent primary residence. And then, of course, the Bay County property appraisers, when you file homestead exemption, will have a list of items that will be required for you to bring in to file your homestead exemption.
I mean, nobody likes to go in person. I saw where you can apply online. I went in person. Luckily, there wasn't a wait for me, and it took about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And honestly, they only asked for my driver's license.
Yeah,
So
and I think now they're also sent when you purchase a home and it's your primary residence, they send out a PIN number or a code so that you can do it online. So they make it really easy.
perfect. And then also to note, property taxes reset upon the sale of the house. Would you like to explain this?
Sure. So, say you purchase a new construction home, the assessed taxes on that property may have just been for the land. Now, when the builder builds the new home on the property and you purchase it, your taxes are now reassessed and your taxable assessed value is now at the value with a home on it. So your assessed value on that home, your taxes will go up.
And that's a great example. Another example is just a seller that has been in that home the last 20 years, and they're taking advantage of that, that minimum 3% increase. And so, it could be $1 million house, but they're only calling it, they're only paying taxes on 400,000. Well, after you sell that house, that buyer is not paying taxes on the 400,000.
Right.
And so early on, I was getting a lot of calls from my clients. Casey, my mortgage payment went up $100. Can you explain this? And it was because the house was reassessed after the sale for the higher amounts.
Yeah.
And then, so just a quick example, you buy a home that has a lower assessed value, just like I said, it's, people doing the Save Our Homes cap, the 3% per year. After you purchase, the county reassesses the property based on the full market value and not the old owner's capped value, which is what I just mentioned. This increases the assessed value and therefore increases your property taxes. Your mortgage servicer sees the higher tax bill, recalculates your escrow, and raises your monthly mortgage payment to cover it.
That's right. Now, one thing to mention with homestead exemption, you do have the option of what's called portability, where you can carry your tax savings with you Florida allows homeowners to transfer up to $500,000 of their Save Our Home benefit to a new homestead. So it must be a new homestead when you move within certain time frames. And the time frame is within 3 years. That can make upsizing, downsizing, or relocating more financially feasible. I didn't know that until I started researching for this podcast on homestead exemptions. So
That's
that's
excellent information.
right.
Perfect. Well, we like to end our every episode with a motivational quote. Today, it's you never get a second chance to make a first impression, especially when selling a home. Stage it like it's already sold. This is inspired by our podcast today, but mainly Oscar Wilde. So tune in next time at the Real Estate Girls podcast for a mix of education, entertainment, and expert advice. And we hope, that if you like this episode, you can like, comment, subscribe. Let us know any feedback.
Absolutely. And tune in next time.
We'll see you next time.